The sea was quiet the night we found the island. Too quiet for a war zone, too quiet for men who'd just watched their ship burn behind them. We were half frozen, half awake, drifting toward a place that shouldn't even exist. No name, no lights. Just black cliffs rising out of the fog like they'd been waiting for us. You ever wonder what's sitting out there on a piece of land the world forgot? Before we dive into this story, go ahead and like, subscribe, because I've got a lot more wild, dark stories coming your way. And tell me in the comments, what's your favorite cryptid? Alright, let's begin. Back in late 1944, we lived in it day after day on the Kestrel. She was a small destroyer escort, old paint, loud engines, deck plates that rattled when seas got mean. She wasn't pretty, but she was ours, and back then things still felt steady. Predictable. Almost normal, if you can call anything normal in a war. We were running a wide patrol east of the Kurils, empty water out there. Gray sky, gray sea. Fog draped over everything like dirty cloth, the kind of place where you heard your own thoughts too clearly. The war had swung our way by then, or so command kept saying. Big pushes west, fleet hammering whatever Japan had left to throw. But in the remote zones, where ships like ours poked around, folks said there were irregulars. Stragglers, deserters, crews with no home left. Some attacked anyone they found. Sailors joked about pirates, then joked less and less. Morning routine looked like any other day. I came up to the bridge, coffee in hand, taste burnt as always. Russo stood over the chart table, shoulders tight, chewing his lip like he did when he thought no one watched. Alvarez had the deck and was running her like she always did, barking orders with that calm edge that made even the laziest sailors get moving. Ortiz was fussing with the radio set, mumbling about static, and Chang was below decks, probably checking on the usual colds and bruises the sea gave us. Crew kept busy, gunnery mates cleaning the twin mounts. Engine crew swearing at the boilers. Two deckhands smoking behind the aft stack, thinking I didn't notice. Card game going under a tarp on the starboard side. Just a normal day in a place that felt far from anything human. Russo tapped the chart with his pencil as I stepped beside him. Sir, we're still on the plotted course, but take a look. He slid one of the older maps over. The paper was yellow around the edges. There, near the corner of our grid, someone long dead had scribbled a faint circle. Looked like an island. Never seen that on newer charts, Russo said. Nervous voice. Always sounded like he was asking permission to exist. Phantom islands happen, I said. Old mistakes. Sailor saw a shadow and drew it down. Happens all the time. I didn't think much of it then. Still strange, he muttered. Ortiz perked up. Half the old charts are haunted anyway, he joked. Sea ghosts, missing islands, mermaids trying to seduce sailors. Cut it, Alvarez said. Save your ghost stories for when we're bored enough to suffer them. He grinned like always, but I could see he liked the idea less than he let on. Around mid-morning, we caught a burst of radio chatter. Ortiz leaned over the set. Hold on, getting something. A voice cracked through. Rough, panicked. Sounded like a merchantman or cargo hauler. Raiders, no flag, taking fire, position. Then it cut into static. The bridge went still for a moment. Raiders? Russo said. Pirates, Alvarez muttered low. Same thing the crew's been hearing about. Officially, they weren't pirates. They were irregular enemy combatants. Unofficially, rumors said worse. Men from broken ships. Criminals. Deserters from half a dozen flags. People with nothing to lose. No rules. No mercy. We logged the transmission and passed it to command. They didn't answer. Out here, they never answered fast. By late afternoon, the cold rain slapped across the deck. Crew moved slower, shoulders hunched. But there was still the usual Navy banter. Mess hall filled quick. Some talked about home. Alvarez broke up a petty argument between two machinist mates about who could win a fistfight between the Kestrel and a Typhoon. Ortiz told some nonsense story about a sailor he met who claimed he could hear ships in the fog before radar picked them up. Chang wrote a letter at the far table, pencil smudging the page, face tight like he was trying not to think about something. And Russo kept glancing at the compass, chewing that same damn lip. Fuel gauge on the logbook showed we were running lower than I liked. Supplies were thin too. We were 3 days from heading back to base. Spirits weren't bad, but not good either. Just that quiet middle where sailors keep going. Evening settled. Wind eased. Sea calmed a bit. I stayed on the bridge for night watch. Something I did often since I'd taken command after our old captain got torn up by a bad storm weeks earlier. I still felt guilt about that night. Thought maybe if I'd given a different order, he'd still be aboard. That guilt stuck to me like tar. Ortiz stood beside me, headset on, scanning the dark. Fog thinned out now and then, letting a sliver of moonlight hit the waves. Everything felt too still. Then he stiffened. "Sir, think I saw something." "Where?" He pointed port side, far off. I grabbed the binoculars, saw only low haze. But for a moment, just a heartbeat. A white flicker shined, like a lantern or a reflection. Then it vanished. "No radar contact," Ortiz said. "Could have been a ship, or nothing, hard to tell." "Log it," I said. "Keep watch. No alarms yet." He nodded, though he didn't look convinced. I leaned over the rail. The sea stretched out flat and quiet, small ripples brushing the hull. We'd all seen calm seas before. Anyone who sailed knew calm didn't mean safe. Sometimes it meant the opposite. Still, as I looked out, something felt off. Hard to place, just a weight in the gut. That night, the water barely moved, even the wind held its breath. And the last thing I remember thinking before the next day broke everything apart was simple. The sea looked too calm for war. Dawn came slow the next morning. Fog sat on us like wet cloth. Drizzle tapped the deck rails and made the whole ship smell like rust and old paint. We moved through the water at a crawl, engines humming steady. Nothing on radar. Just the usual slow sweep and the same empty green screen. I stood on the bridge with a mug of coffee gone cold, watching the gray smear around us. Alvarez had the deck again. Russo hovered near the chart table, rubbing his hands together like he was freezing, even though the bridge wasn't the coldest part of the ship. "Take us toward the area of that light," I told Alvarez. "Slow sweep, nothing fancy." "Aye," she said, voice flat like she already felt something was wrong. Russo kept checking the compass. Every few minutes he'd squint up at the sky, though there wasn't anything to see. Fog hid the horizon, clouds hid the sun. Just dull gray everywhere. "Something off?" I asked him. He flinched a little. "Not sure, sir. Heading feels strange. Compass says we're on course, but when the fog thinned earlier, the stars didn't line up right." "Might be drift," I said. "Or magnetic junk in this sector." I didn't fully believe it, but I didn't want him spiraling this early. He nodded, but didn't look any calmer. Down below, little things were going wrong. One of the bosun's mates swore someone moved his wrench set, though no one admitted touching it. A watertight door swung shut by itself when the ship rolled just right, spooking a young seaman. A light on the port passage flickered on and off, even after Chang and an electrician checked the wiring. Nothing serious. Just those small things that stack together and start eating at nerves. Chang came up with a report on a sailor who hadn't slept. Said he had some weird dream about a black shoreline and wrecked ships, like one of those ghost stories old-timers like to tell. Chang brushed it off with a laugh, but I could tell he remembered it. By mid-morning, the fog thinned enough to see 20, maybe 30 yards. Sea looked dead. No other wakes. No birds, no debris. Just open water that didn't feel open at all. I went back over the charts with Russo. He brought out the older map again, the one with the faint islands scribbled in. That little circle sat just north of where we were drifting. "Someone wrote a note here," Russo said, tapping the edge. "See? Position unreliable. Possibly submerged or misplotted. Old cartographers made mistakes," I said. "Happens. Ocean shifts. Sandbars appear. Maybe someone saw a rock outcrop and guessed wrong." "You don't think it's there," he said. "I think if it was important, newer charts would show it." He nodded, but he didn't fully buy it. Couldn't blame him. I wasn't sure myself. Around late afternoon, fog lifted like a curtain. Not much, but enough. Ortiz was on lookout and called out, "Hold up, got something at bearing 030. Alvarez swung her binoculars up. I grabbed mine. A silhouette sat on the horizon. Not sharp, just a shape that didn't match a fishing boat or a Navy hull. Looked worn, dirty. Hull lines rough. Could have been a trawler once, or a small freighter. But it moved slow, too slow. "No flag," Ortiz muttered. "Stacks cold. No smoke." We tried raising them on radio. Nothing. Ortiz tapped the headset. "Either they're dead silent or their radio's busted." "Signal lamp," I told him. We flashed the standard ID request. The ship just kept crawling along, barely changing bearing. Almost like they didn't notice us. Or they were pretending not to. Could be disabled, Russo said, though he didn't sound sure. Or waiting, Alvarez muttered. I didn't say anything, just watched the hull drifting there like a corpse. After the third unanswered signal, the tension on the bridge thickened. Even the engines sounded quieter. Sir, Ortiz said, think they're turning. He was right. The unknown vessel shifted its bow, slow and deliberate, lining itself toward us. I checked our radar again. Nothing. Just an empty sweep. But I saw the ship with my own eyes, plain as day. Keep distance, I said. We'll close in slow. Cautious. No sudden moves. Alvarez didn't argue. She passed orders to helm, kept her jaw tight, eyes never leaving that silhouette. Fog slid around it, making the hull look like it drifted in and out of existence. Something about it didn't feel right, like a dead thing trying to act alive. Crew sensed it too. Quiet murmurs on the deck. A few sailors came up to watch even though they weren't needed. Chang stood near the hatch, arms folded, worry written across his face. You think these are the raiders? He asked. Don't know yet, I said. Could just be a lost ship. Feels wrong, he whispered. Couldn't argue. Kestrel held her line. We approached just close enough to see faint scarring on the unknown ship's hull. Rust streaks, dents, patches welded on fast and ugly. Nothing about it looked official. Ortiz adjusted the binoculars. Sir, no crew on deck. No movement. Alvarez clicked her tongue. Nobody's that still on a working ship. Even Russo leaned forward. If they're disabled, someone would be signaling. Or showing panic, Chang added. Silence folded around us. The sea stayed calm, almost unnaturally so. I felt a weight in my gut. Same weight I'd felt the night our old captain was injured. Same cold certainty that something was already moving behind what we could see. I ordered one more radio hail. Ortiz sent it out. Got nothing back but faint static. All right, I said quietly. We proceed careful. But deep down, I think we all understood something simple and awful. We weren't alone out here. And whatever drifted toward us had been waiting a long time. I remember thinking the other ship looked half dead. No lights. No flag. Just that patched up hull drifting like it was held together by rust and stubbornness. We kept a safe distance, guns manned but not pointed. Standard procedure. Nothing fancy. Everything by the book, even though my gut said the book wasn't going to save us. Alvarez stood beside me on the bridge wing, rain dripping off her cap. They're playing possum, she muttered. Maybe, I said. Let's not jump to it. But she was right. She knew it. I knew it. Every sailor on Kestrel felt it crawling up their spines. I grabbed the mic and sent out the usual command hail. Unidentified vessel. This is United States Navy destroyer escort, Kestrel. Heave to. Prepare for boarding inspection. Clear. Firm. No threat. No panic. Silence. I tried again. Nothing but the low thump of our engines and the soft slap of waves. Then it started. The dead ship burst to life like someone kicked open a door in hell. Metal plates swung aside on their deck, improvised shields welded on, gun barrels pushed through gaps, and then the crack of rifles and the deeper bark of a mounted gun. Contact, Alvarez shouted. Kestrel shuddered as rounds smacked her hull and tore through railings. Glass shattered across the bridge. Men yelled below. Smoke bombs arced from the enemy's deck and hit ours, belching thick gray that stunned eyes and lungs. Return fire, I yelled. Our gunners lit them up fast. Short bursts. Controlled. But their smoke made it damn near impossible to see. Shell fragments tore across the superstructure. A round hit near the radio shack and Ortiz stumbled back, blood running down his arm. I'm fine, just a scratch, he gasped, trying to crawl back toward the radio even as Alvarez pulled him behind cover. On the main deck, sailors scrambled the hoses, trying to fight a fire sparked near the aft gun mount. Shrapnel whined through the air. The world narrowed to noise, metal ripping, voices shouting, guns hammering. Chang knelt on the tilting deck beside a sailor clutching his stomach, hands slick with blood. Stay with me, Chang kept saying, though his voice shook. Waves slapped up over the rails, soaking them both. Through the smoke, I saw shapes on the enemy deck, men in mismatched gear. Some pieces Japanese, some American, some just rags. They moved like they'd done this before. No formation, no discipline, just violence. On their hull, half hidden by grime, I caught a symbol. Painted crude, a black wave curling over a sinking ship. Nothing official, nothing honorable. Just a mark to show they belonged to no one but themselves. Then grappling hooks clanged onto our rail. Boarders port side. Alvarez yelled, already sprinting with 2 sailors. She reached the rail just as the first pirate climbed up. She shot him point blank. Another grabbed at her arm but got taken down by one of our boys swinging a wrench like a club. Close fighting. Ugly. Screams too close to my ears. Keep them off, I yelled, firing down from the bridge wing. My rounds kicked a man backward, but more swarmed behind him. They didn't fight like soldiers. They fought like cornered animals. Kestrel lurched. A deep boom shook us. Smoke belched up from the lower deck. Engine room hit, someone shouted through the comms. We're taking water. I felt the deck tilt under my boots. We couldn't win this. Not with a crippled engine and fire spreading. Prepare to abandon ship, I said aloud before I even realized I'd made the call. My throat felt raw. Get the wounded topside. Move. Alvarez stared at me for half a second. I saw the fight in her eyes. Then she nodded and ran to help Chang drag another injured sailor. Ortiz, barely conscious, kept fumbling with the radio. Almost got it. Sparks flew. Smoke rose. Then the set gave one last squeal before everything inside it died. But not before he got out a broken string of words and numbers. Enough, maybe. Lifeboats dropped. One took a round and burst into flame, spilling screaming men into the water. Another jammed on its hinge. The last few we got off were overloaded, men clutching each other just to stay aboard. Alvarez helped heave Russo into the motor launch. He looked stunned, face pale, eyes wide like a kid seeing death for the first time. Chang got Ortiz in next, pressing cloth to the wound on his arm. Go, I ordered. I waited until the last possible damn second, then climbed down as fire ate through the deck behind me. We pushed off. Smoke rolled over the Kestrel, flames reaching up her mast. Pirates fired a few last rounds at us but didn't chase. Their ship was already turning away, maybe worried someone heard our call. Or maybe they didn't care what happened to us now that they'd gutted our home. The Kestrel tilted hard, bow dipping. She groaned like a dying animal. Half our crew was still aboard or already gone beneath the water. I didn't let myself think about them. Not then. Night swallowed us fast. Cold air, rough breaths, wounds, fear. No lights but the faint glow of our burning ship behind us. Then, far ahead, through the haze, a darker line on the horizon caught Russo's eye. Land, he whispered, or something shaped like land. We drifted toward it with no idea that the real nightmare hadn't even started. We drifted half the night, engine coughing every few minutes like it was dying but too stubborn to quit. Cold wind cut through our soaked clothes. None of us talked much. Wounded groaned. Water slapped the hull of the motor launch in slow, steady hits that felt like a clock ticking down to something worse. Russo kept checking bearings even though he barely had a working compass left. Ortiz drifted in and out of consciousness, mumbling about the pirates being shadows on water. Chang's hands shook each time he wrapped another bandage. Too few supplies and too many people bleeding. Alvarez stayed at the tiller, jaw clenched, eyes fixed ahead. She didn't say it, but she knew the engine was burning what little fuel remained. We'd die out here if it failed. Night swallowed the horizon except for one thing, a darker smear way out in the distance. Land. Maybe salvation. Maybe something else. Hours crawled until early dawn bled into the sky. Gray light showed cliffs rising from the water like black teeth. Sharp rock. No gentle beach except for one narrow strip between two steep walls. Waves broke over it in rough pulses. That's our only shot, I said. Aim for the gap. Alvarez nodded and steered us in. Wind picked up, spray slapped faces. The motor wheezed, coughing smoke. Then one good wave shoved us forward. Another pushed harder. The boat slammed into the shallows and threw half of us into the surf. Cold water punched my lungs. Sand scraped across my palms as I crawled up the beach. Sailors coughed and retched around me. Someone cried out in pain. Someone else vomited seawater. Russo lay on his back, staring at the sky like he didn't believe we were alive. Black sand. That's the first thing I saw clearly. dark grains that felt gritty as ground metal. Cliffs on both sides loomed high and jagged. Wind hissed between them like it was whispering something we weren't meant to hear. We staggered to our feet, one by one. I checked heads, counted faces. Fewer than I wanted, more than I expected. Get everyone above the high tide mark, I said. Alvarez, take 2 and look for anything we can salvage off the boat before the surf eats it. Chang did a quick check on wounds. Hypothermia setting in. Cuts, burns, shrapnel. Nothing we couldn't handle if we got shelter. Everything we couldn't handle if the weather turned worse. Ortiz sat hunched over, clutching his arm. Hear that? He said softly. Hear what? I asked. He tilted his head toward the cliffs. Sounded like metal, like a chain hitting rock. Faint. Might have been the wind, or might have been something else. I didn't say it. While Alvarez pulled gear from the boat, Russo knelt in the sand, muttering numbers. He looked up at me with hollow eyes. Sir, by the charts, nothing should be here. No land, no shoals, nothing. Charts aren't perfect, I said. Not this wrong, he whispered. We spread out along the upper sand, trying to get a sense of things. Cold wind, low clouds, no birds. The beach stretched only a few hundred yards before the cliffs boxed it. A few pieces of old metal littered the tide line, rusty scrap, maybe from an old shipwreck long forgotten. Looks abandoned, Alvarez said, joining me. Or never inhabited, I replied. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. The place felt wrong. Not dangerous yet, just wrong. Like we'd walked into someone else's forgotten memory. Chang called out. He held a rusted chunk of metal coated in sand. Sir, these markings look Japanese. Old, maybe wartime. I turned it over. Faded characters, edges corroded. Could have come from any of the small outposts Japan scattered across the northern waters. But this island wasn't on any map I trusted. So why would metal from a garrison wash up here? We couldn't stay on the beach. Too exposed, too cold. So I sent a small group to check the cliffs for a path upward. Alvarez went with them. After a few minutes, she shouted down, "Found something." Paths rough but climbable. We moved slow, slick rock, loose stones. A few carved steps cut into the stone, old, weathered, almost reclaimed by the cliff. Whoever carved them hadn't been around in a long time. At the top, we reached a plateau. Grass bent low in the wind. Scrubby bushes. A few twisted trees that looked half dead. And in the middle of the plateau, like a ghost from another war, a collapsed wooden watchtower lay in broken pieces. Sandbags rotted beside it, torn open by years of storms. The whole place smelled of mold and wet earth. Definitely a military site, Russo said, voice tight. We found a sign too. Faded, cracked, leaning against a rock. Japanese characters ran across it. Nakamura would have read it easily if he were with us, but we didn't know him yet. We only guessed at the meaning. Russo squinted at it. Something about restricted area, he muttered. Something about research. That's all I can make out. Alvarez exhaled slow. Why leave this place off newer charts? Maybe they meant to return, Russo said. Maybe they never got the chance. Wind gusted hard and almost knocked Ortiz over. He grabbed at his emergency radio, turning the dial with shaky hands. Hold on, think I'm getting something. Static. Then a faint blip. Like Morse. A single pulse, then silence, then another. Not a message. Not a call. Just something. Could be atmospheric nonsense, he said, though his eyes said he didn't believe it. Chang knelt by a patch of disturbed dirt. Someone's been here recently. Soil soft. Footprints, not ours. The thought hung in the air like a weight. I looked around the plateau, the broken tower. The old sandbags, the steps carved into the cliff, the beach below, the black sand, the scrap metal, the faint radio pulse, and footprints belonging to someone we hadn't met. All right, I said. We set camp near the old fortifications. Keep watch. No assumptions about this place. We treat it like enemy territory until proven otherwise. Sir, Alvarez said quietly, you think we're alone? I stared at the empty plateau. No, I said. Wind whipped over us again, carrying a faint metallic clank from somewhere deep within the cliffs. Maybe just the wind, maybe not. One thing felt solid in my gut. This island wasn't lost. It was waiting. The plateau felt bigger once we started moving across it, grass bending low in the wind, scrub bushes scratching our boots. The old Japanese outpost sat quiet and ruined, like the war had chewed it up and left it here to rot. We searched slow, careful. Weapons up, nobody wanted surprises. Alvarez kicked over a rusted kettle near what used to be a mess tent. "Place has been dead for years," she said. "Mostly," I replied. The closer we got to the camp, the worse it looked. Rotten canvas hung in strips from poles long snapped, cookware eaten through by rust. A collapsed comm shack leaning sideways, its antenna snapped clean off. And near the edge of the site, half buried in dirt, bones in faded uniforms. "Hell," Russo whispered, voice catching. Chang knelt beside one of the skeletons and brushed dirt from the torn cloth. "Looks like they didn't die clean," he said. "Hard to tell. Might have been disease, starvation." He stopped talking. Nobody asked him to keep going. We pushed deeper into the ruins. That's when things stopped being old. Near the perimeter, we found a small fire ring, blackened stones. Ash still under one rock. Not fresh, but not ancient either. "Someone's been here," Alvarez said quietly. "Recently," Chang added. Not far from it, we found a crude shelter. Not wartime Japanese. Not military at all. Sheets of newer plank, torn canvas patched over gaps, a few pieces of scrap tied together with rope. "Someone living rough," I said, "or hiding." Inside the shelter, we found a tin cup with water still in it. A piece of dried fish. A bundle of sticks arranged like someone meant to start another fire but didn't. Then Ortiz froze and pointed. Footprints. Damp soil held them. Barely visible, but there. Fresh. We followed the trail toward the cliffs. Carefully. No talking. The wind gusted hard and scattered grit everywhere. Alvarez rounded the cluster of rocks near the cliff's edge and jerked back. A thin man in torn Japanese uniform stood behind a boulder, rifle aimed at her chest. Eyes wide, face gaunt, clothing half rotted. He looked like he hadn't eaten properly in months. Alvarez raised her weapon fast but didn't fire. Russo stumbled behind her and nearly froze when he saw the rifle pointed their way. "Hold it," I shouted from behind, running up with Ortiz. The man flinched and swung the rifle toward me. His hands shook. He wasn't sure whether to shoot or run. He whispered something in Japanese, then louder, still shaking. "I don't want to kill you," I said slowly. "Drop the rifle." He didn't drop it, but he loosened his grip. Tears formed at the corners of his eyes. Alvarez moved one step closer, not aggressive. "Just steady. Put it down," she said, calm as iron. He trembled, then lowered the rifle and let it fall. It hit the ground with a soft clack. We swarmed him fast, disarmed him, checked for hidden knives, then backed him against a rock. He didn't fight, just shook. He looked up at me. "Lieutenant Kenji Nakamura," he said in broken English. I stayed because duty. Years on this island had hollowed him out. He looked half feral, half human. But his eyes still carried rank, still carried memory. I motioned to Chang, check him for wounds. Chang stepped closer and examined him. Malnourished, exhausted, but not injured. Nakamura watched us with cautious fear. "Americans," he said softly. "You are Americans." "Yes," I said. "Survivors." He nodded slowly, as if piecing old thoughts together. "Others were here once, my unit. Small. Weather station. Research station," they said. "But supplies stopped. Men died. Some left." "Left how?" Russo asked. Nakamura's mouth tightened. "Ships. Abandoned ships. Pirates now. They go on sea. Not soldiers. Not men anymore." "So the raiders came from here?" Ortiz asked. "Some," Nakamura said. "Not all. But they return. They use island, hidden places, caches. They come when they need. Always come back. This place is harbor." The word hung hard in the cold air. We brought Nakamura back to the ruined camp, gave him some water. He drank slow, eyes wary. He told us more, though never everything straight. His English was decent, but his mind jumped around. He spoke of an installation meant to gather weather patterns and track currents. Then hinted at tests, though he didn't explain what kind. He said his commander died of sickness. Others starved. A few survivors raided passing ships, then raided more, then didn't stop. I stayed, he said quietly, almost to himself. I thought help would come, or orders, but war moved, left me. Alvarez and I stepped away to talk. We can't trust him, she said. No, I agreed, but we can't ignore him either. Russo joined us. He said they buried supplies here, caches, and the pirates come back for them. And if they saw our distress call, I said, they know we're somewhere close. The thought churned in my stomach. Nakamura sat by the broken sandbags, staring out at the sea like it scared him more than we did. He whispered something I couldn't make out. I stepped over. What did you say? He looked up. They will return, he said. They smelled weakness. Your ship, your signal. They hunt survivors. They kill witnesses. This place is trap. Even the wind seemed to freeze for a second. We need defenses, I said. Now, Alvarez nodded and started ordering the sailors around. We fortified the old trenches, cleared firing lines, salvaged whatever old equipment we could find that wouldn't blow up in our faces. Russo rigged improvised barricades from scrap wood and metal. Ortiz kept working the radio, trying to get more than a single blip of static. Chang tended wounds, hands moving with grim determination. As we worked, Nakamura paced, restless, like he was waiting for something inevitable. When the sun dipped behind clouds, Ortiz suddenly stiffened at the cliff edge. He raised the binoculars. His breathing hitched. What do you see? I asked. He pointed out past the surf. There, he whispered. A faint light bobbed on the water far offshore, low, small, trying not to be seen. Ship's lantern, Alvarez said. Damn quiet one. Russo swallowed. They found us. Nakamura didn't look surprised. He just whispered, they returned for blood. I stared at that distant flicker as the wind turned colder. The pirates knew this island, and now they knew we were on it. Night came in fast. Sky turned black without much warning. The kind of darkness that makes you feel blind even with your eyes open. Wind hit the plateau in long, cold sweeps, carrying that metallic echo from the cliffs. Sometimes it sounded like loose hardware banging around. Sometimes it sounded like footsteps. We set a watch rotation, 2 hours each. Nobody slept well. Russo kept pacing, muttering bearings to himself. Ortiz dozed off at one point and jerked awake screaming from a nightmare he wouldn't talk about. Chang sat with his back against the broken tower, coat wrapped tight, eyes hollow from everything he'd seen since the Kestrel went under. Nakamura stayed awake more than any of us. He stood near the cliff edge, staring down like he expected something to climb up. And maybe he did. Around midnight, during one of the colder gusts, Alvarez pulled me aside. You trust him? She asked, nodding toward Nakamura. No, I said, but I believe he's scared. Whatever scared him first, that's what we should be worried about. She grunted. He keeps looking at the cliffs like the island wants him dead. Maybe it does, I said. As if hearing us, Nakamura turned, his face pale in the moonlight. He hesitated, then walked over. There's something you must know, he said, about this place. Go on, I said. The tunnels, he whispered, beneath the cliffs. Storage rooms, medical rooms, cold rooms, built early in war. They kept ammunition there, supplies, but also other things. What other things? Chang asked. Nakamura didn't answer right away. He looked at the ground like he hated what he was about to say. Tests. On prisoners. On sick men. They studied disease, cold exposure. Tried to understand how long a body lasts. Many died inside. A silence landed heavy on us. You're telling me this island's crawling with old bunkers full of dead men? Russo whispered. Yes, Nakamura said. Most died. Some were left when the garrison collapsed. You should have told us earlier, Alvarez snapped. I feared you would think I was enemy, he said. You still fear me. He wasn't wrong. But we needed intel. And those tunnels sounded like the only place with supplies that might help hold out against the pirates. Show us the entrance, I said. He nodded slowly. We took a team, me, Alvarez, Nakamura, Chang. Ortiz stayed above with Russo and the rest, armed and watchful. The tunnel entrance sat low in the cliff, hidden behind brush and a slab of rock. Nakamura moved the brush aside and revealed a rusted steel door half off its hinges. We squeezed inside. The smell hit first. Rot, mold, cold metal, old chemicals. The walls were rough concrete, cracked and stained. Our flashlights shook in our hands, beams cutting through the damp darkness. The tunnel narrowed fast. Pipes overhead dripped cold water. Wooden crates sat broken on the sides. Old Japanese markings faded, nearly gone. One crate still held munitions, grenades, a few shells, some boxes of rifle ammo. Some damp, some dangerously intact. Careful, Alvarez warned. Don't touch anything that looks like it wants to blow. Nakamura led us deeper. Most rooms collapsed long ago, he said. Others still dangerous. We passed a door half rotted through. Inside lay old medical gear, rusted tables, shattered glass, straps nailed to boards. I didn't want to guess who or what had been strapped in them. Chang's breath hitched. This is wrong, Chang whispered. Boar doesn't need this. Nakamura lowered his head. We did what we were told. Farther in, we found cells carved into the rock. Bars bent and eaten by rust, bones scattered. A set of shackles bolted to a wall. One skull still wore a remnant of a prisoner's cloth cap. I felt the cold even through my jacket. We're not dying down here, I said to myself more than anyone. We checked another room. More crates. Some medical logs. Nakamura read pieces of them aloud. His voice shook through the translation. Cold fever spread through. Men sealed in room 3. Studied rate of decline. Recorded final breath. No burial. He dropped the log. His hands wouldn't steady. Chang stepped away, pressing a hand to his mouth. We got what we need, I said. Enough weapons to hold out for a bit. We go back up. Before we turned, a faint vibration ran through the floor. A hum. Then a scraping sound from somewhere near the cliff face below. What was that? Alvarez whispered. Nakamura stiffened. Landing boat. We killed our lights and rushed out. Climbed the slope back to the plateau, fast but quiet. Ortiz met us halfway, panting. Voices on shoreline, boots on rock. I heard them from below. They're here. How many? I asked. Don't know, he said. Enough. We reached the top just as the first pirate scouting party reached the plateau. 3 men, mismatched weapons. Silent. They moved like they knew the land. We took cover behind old sandbags and broken wood. Hold until they're close, I whispered. The pirates crept forward. Alvarez waited. Breath steady, trigger ready. Then she fired. One pirate went down with a grunt. The other 2 ducked behind rocks and fired back. Russo flinched as rounds cracked past him. Ortiz dropped flat and covered his head, bleeding again from his bandaged arm. We pushed forward, flanking the scouts. Chang fired a single round and hit one in the leg. Alvarez closed in and finished him. The last pirate dropped his weapon and threw his hands up. We tackled him fast. He was American, dirty, scarred, a deserter by the look of him. What's your name? I asked after we dragged him into the light. Foster, he spat. Doesn't matter. You're dead anyway. I pressed the muzzle of my pistol against his forehead. Try again, he swallowed. They're coming. Lots of them. They saw your distress call. Figured you might crawl to this island. They use it. Stash point. Camp. Easy place to unload cargo or fix a boat. They don't leave witnesses. Nakamura stared at him like looking at a ghost from his own past. How many? Alvarez asked. Enough, Foster said. More than you got bullets. We tied him to a broken support beam. He didn't resist. Wind shifted. A flare shot up from the far side of the island, red streak lighting the clouds. A signal. Foster let out a bitter laugh. Told you, they're here. The flare burned out and darkness took over again. I looked at my crew, exhausted, hurt, scared, but steady. We hold this place, I said. We fight smart. Nakamura tightened his grip on his old pistol. They will not take this island again, he said. He believed that. Maybe we needed someone who did. We braced ourselves for the night ahead. Pirates in the dark, tunnels beneath us, dead men in the walls. No rescue in sight. And the worst part? We weren't trapped because the island held us. We were trapped because the sea itself had nowhere else for us to go. Dawn came slow and sickly, light barely pushing through the clouds. Everyone looked half dead already. Wet, cold, eyes red, hands shaking from the long night. Pirates somewhere out there on the island. More coming. We all felt it. Haze that was me had no illusions left. We weren't getting off this rock without a fight. We gathered inside the ruins of the outpost. Broken sandbags, old crates, 8 old crates, sharp winds scraping across stone. Russo laid out a rough sketch of the plateau and the tunnels on the ground using a stick in wet dirt. Alvarez checked the remaining ammo. It wasn't much. Chang wrapped his last clean bandages around a sailor's leg. Ortiz tried to fix the emergency radio again but shook his head after a few minutes. Nakamura stood apart from the group, staring toward the cliffs like he expected his dead to climb up from the tunnel mouths. Foster, tied to a broken pole, watched everything with a smirk that made half the crew want to hit him again. "We can't fight them head on," I said. "Not with our numbers." "We don't have numbers," Alvarez said. "We have bodies. Then we make the terrain do the killing," I replied. She nodded. "Good." We laid out the plan, simple and ugly, the only kind we had left. Russo and I rigged the worst parts of the tunnels with traps. Old grenades, loose crates. One unstable shell we found that I prayed wouldn't blow too early. He set up tripwire choke points where the tunnels narrowed. Sweat rolled down his face the whole time, even in the cold. "Please don't misfire," he muttered every few seconds. Alvarez organized the firing positions above ground. Old trenches, rock ledges, anything that gave high ground. Her voice stayed steady, but her eyes weren't. Too much death behind them already. She placed each sailor where they'd have a chance. Not a good chance, but a chance. Nakamura insisted he fight with us. "This island was my post," he said. "I will end what started here." Foster saw the opportunity and tried bargaining. "I know their paths," he said. "I can show you where they'll move." I want a chance to live. I didn't trust him, but he knew the pirates' habits. Good intel beats pride. Alvarez kept a knife pressed to his back the whole time he talked. If he tried anything, she'd end him before he finished the attempt. Right before dawn broke fully, we heard them. Engines. More than one. Low, throaty rumble bouncing off the cliffs. Pirates landing on different beaches. "They're spreading out," Ortiz said. "Good," I said. "Means they'll funnel into the tunnels if we push them right." When the first gunshots cracked across the scrub, it wasn't a surprise. Pirates came up quick and loud, weapons firing wild. We held until they got too close. Then we burst from cover, fired shore-controlled shots, and fell back fast. They chased. Predictable. Angry. Hungry for a kill. We dropped 2 of them near the old tower, then pulled back toward the first tunnel entrance. Another group of pirates flanked from the side, forcing us down into the mouth of the cliff. The tunnels swallowed us whole. Dark, damp, air thick with old rot and new sweat. Echoes made everything worse. Gunfire bounced around like thunder. Pirates shouted in mixed languages, voices warped by the narrow rock. A grenade trap went off deeper in the tunnels. The blast shook dust loose from the ceiling and sent a cloud of choking debris across the corridor. Screams followed, couldn't tell whose. Alvarez grabbed my arm. Time to push them into the center. Her face was streaked with dirt and blood, though I didn't know whose. We fell back deeper. Pirates poured in behind us. Some tripped the wires Russo set. One trap blew too early and nearly took me and Chang out. The concussion rang my ears until everything sounded muffled. "Keep moving," I yelled. Nakamura charged ahead of us with a box of old explosives. I grabbed his shoulder. "Don't be stupid." He looked at me, calm in a way that scared me. "This is my last duty." Before I could stop him, he ran toward the side tunnel where we heard heavy boots approaching. Pirates swarmed the junction. Nakamura shouted, maybe an order, maybe a prayer, and yanked the detonator cord. The explosion blasted hot air through the tunnels. Dust, rock, screams, then silence in that corridor. Chang stared at the rubble. "He blocked the flank," he whispered. "He saved us." There wasn't time to mourn. More pirates pushed in from another tunnel. Alvarez and Russo held them off with short bursts. Ortiz, bleeding again from his arm, kept feeding us ammo with shaking hands. Then the pirate leader showed himself. Big man, scarred jaw, wore a mix of Japanese boots and American jacket. Eyes cold. He fired 3 shots down the tunnel and hit one of our sailors in the chest. The kid went down instantly. The leader stepped closer. "Come out," he said. "Make it quick." I moved toward him, firing as I went. Rounds sparked off rock as he ducked. He rushed me in the dark. We slammed into the wall, grappling. His breath smelled like stale fish and liquor. He swung a knife. I caught his wrist, shoved him back, punched him hard enough my knuckles cracked. He came at me again. Alvarez appeared out of the dark, firing from the hip. 2 rounds hit him. He staggered. I rammed him backward into the wall and hit him until he dropped. He slid down the stone, gasping once before going still. "Clear," Alvarez shouted. But it wasn't clear yet. Pirates behind him saw their leader fall and broke. Some ran toward the exit. Others fired blindly and backed into the traps Russo left deeper in the tunnels. 1 grenade trap detonated near the rear group. Another blast shook the whole cliff. Screams faded. Footsteps retreated. "They're pulling out," Russo gasped. "They're running, not all of them." Some kept fighting until Alvarez put them down, but most broke. Without leadership, without plans, they turned feral and scattered. When we finally stumbled out onto the plateau again, the sky was a bruised gray. Smoke drifted from cracks in the cliff. The beach below echoed with engines as the surviving pirates fled toward their boats. Ortiz pressed a hand to his headset. "Hold on," hearing something different. We all froze. Above us, far overhead, an engine roared. Not a boat, not a pirate. A plane, high and fast. Too fast to help us right then, but enough to see the smoke. Enough to know something was happening on this forgotten island. I stared at the sky, exhausted beyond thought. We won. Barely, but the air stank of burnt powder and death. The tunnels behind us groaned as if the island itself was trying to exhale the ghosts we'd stirred up. Alvarez leaned against a rock, breathing hard. "This place wants to bury us," she muttered. "Not today," I said. The fighting was done. The surviving weren't. Morning light came thin and tired over the plateau. Smoke from the tunnels drifted in lazy streaks. The air tasted like burnt metal and cold dirt. We moved slow. Everything hurt. Everyone was quiet. Only a handful of us were still breathing. Alvarez, Russo, Chang, Ortiz. 3 sailors who could barely stand. Foster, dead. Whether from the fighting or because one of the crew decided he didn't deserve another sunrise, I never asked. Didn't need to. Nakamura was gone too. Buried under rock and rubble where he made his last stand. We marked the spot with a piece of driftwood stuck into the ground. Not much of a grave, but better than what he expected. The pirates who survived had run to whatever boats they came in on. None lingered. The island chewed them up, same as it did everyone else. "We need a signal," Alvarez said, voice rough. Ortiz sat near the edge of the plateau with a pile of scavenged equipment, bits of old Japanese radios, wires from the pirate gear, parts stripped from our busted emergency set. His hands shook, but he worked steady. "Give me a minute," he muttered. "Maybe 2. Chang bandaged a sailor with a shattered arm. Russo stood near the cliff staring at the sea like he finally understood the thing he'd spent his life trying to chart. Lines on paper didn't show you the monsters living in empty spaces. Ortiz's radio crackled. A faint hum. He twisted a dial. Smacked the side with his palm. Then a voice. Weak, warbled, but real. "Unidentified transmission. Repeat your last." All of us froze. Alvarez dropped to one knee beside Ortiz. "Answer them." He pushed the button. "This is survivors of the Kestrel. We are on an uncharted island somewhere east of the Kurils. We need extraction. Repeat, we need extraction." The static hummed. Then, "Copy. Reading you. Searching for signal origin." Ortiz let out a laugh that cracked in the middle. Chang sagged to the dirt, wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. I felt something unclench in my chest that had been tight for days. Hours later, a silhouette appeared through the mist, a Navy patrol ship. She approached slow, cautious. When they saw the smoke stains on the cliffs and the wrecked excavation marks, they sped up. A landing boat reached the shore first. Sailors in clean uniforms stepped onto the black sand, rifles slung, eyes wide as they took in the scene. They found us on the plateau, exhausted, leaning on rocks, weapons hanging limp. "You the survivors?" one officer asked. "Yeah," I said, my voice barely there. "What's left of us?" They helped us down the cliff path, loaded us onto stretchers, gave water, blankets, quiet words none of us really heard. The boat carried us back to the ship, engines humming smooth and strong, the kind of sound that makes you realize how long you've been living on borrowed time. On board, a debrief team asked questions. We told them what we needed to. Pirates, firefights, survival. We left out the worst of the tunnels, the experiments, the skeletons, the island's forgotten past. No one needed those details recorded in neat official handwriting. The officers nodded, wrote down the essentials, and told us the island would be logged as a former enemy outpost, marked for later investigation, then probably forgotten again under a different name. We slept on real bunks that night. Chang checked wounds properly for the first time in days. Russo stared out a porthole at the ocean, face distant. Alvarez walked the deck, making sure the younger sailors ate something and didn't curl up alone in their racks. I stayed quiet, thinking. I looked at the sea and saw something different than I used to. The line between order and chaos out there wasn't a line at all, just shifting water. Men turned pirate, soldiers abandoned, a forgotten lieutenant who stayed too long, and us, lucky enough or cursed enough to survive. When the ship pulled away from the island, I watched it fade in the mist, just a dark smear on the horizon. Soon it was gone, wiped clean by distance and fog. Maps would say nothing was there, just empty blue. But I knew better. Some places stay off charts for a reason. Some stories get buried under waves and silence, and some islands don't want to be found again. So that's the end of our video. If you made it this far, make sure to hit like and subscribe. It really helps the channel and it's free. And if you want more terrifying encounters like this one, check out the other videos on screen right now. Thanks for watching and stay safe out there. See you soon.